Good morning, friends. Today we are going to study fourth topic from plant physiology, that is transpiration. We this process of transpiration, it is very important physiological phenomena in the life of plants. How we can define is this transpiration? It is the loss of water in the form of vapors from the aerial parts of the plant body during the daytime. That phenomena it is called as a transpiration. So it is simple loss of water in the form of vapors. Vapors means evaporation. Here the water evaporates from plant body, from the aerial parts of the plant body, especially from the leaves during the daytime. So we call it as a transpiration. Then question arises, what is difference between transpiration and evaporation? Because in transpiration it is also loss of water in the form of vapors, and evaporation it is also loss of water in the form of vapors. Then what is the difference? First difference is that transpiration it takes place in living cells, so it is vital physiological phenomenon, while evaporation it is a physical phenomenon. Evaporation occurs everywhere. For example, water from the dams or rivers during the summer season, that water evaporates from all surface, and it may lead to the drying of that ponds or the dams water. But transpiration it is physiological phenomena, means it is vital phenomena. Evaporation is physical phenomena. Second difference, transpiration it is regulated by guard cells. The stomatal guard cells, which can close and open during the daytime, stomata remain open, so the loss of water takes place in the form of vapors from the stomatal opening pores. So it is regulated by guard cells. While for evaporation, the surface area of the evaporation it is fully exposed, so loss of water takes place continuously and it may cause the drying. Third difference is that transpiration occurs in the living cells, while evaporation it takes place everywhere. Transpiration prevents drying of the surface, means the plant during the summer season, especially when there is a scarcity of water, during that time the plant or the leaves do not get dried. Plant do not get dried because the stomatal pores get closed for specific time, so the loss of water is checked during that hot summer season or the hot period of the day, and so the plant overcome the drying of that plant body, while evaporation it leads to the drying of surface. So we find drying of dams or rivers during the summer season because as the surface area of that evaporating surface it is exposed, so all water get lost, evaporated. But that not happen in plants because of transpiration, because of specific stomatal structure which regulates the process of transpiration, and it evaporates only specific amount of water, avoiding the drying of the plant body. So this is what we differentiate between transpiration and respiration, evaporation, not respiration. Sorry. Second point in this topic is types of transpiration. What are the different types of transpiration which happens in the plants? First type is called as a cuticular type of transpiration. Cuticle, it is a specific layer present on the surface of the leaves, especially in the xerophytic plants. As in the xerophytic plant, as they grow in the dry desert area, so there is a problem of water scarcity. So whatever the available drop of water, in that limited available water, that plant has to undergo its metabolism like photosynthesis, respiration and others, and it has to survive. So in such a situation, the normal stomatal loss or normal stomata could not work. So these plants on the leaf surface they develop specific thick layer of cutin, that that is called a cuticle. And this cutin layer, which is on the surface of the leaves, so what happens? The stomata which evaporates water, or the which transpires water in the form of vapors, that water vapor they are condensed because of presence of cutin layer on the epidermal surface. So this cutin layer condenses that water. That water is not directly given into the atmosphere, but it is condensed and it is converted back into the liquid water. And that liquid water is again reabsorbed by the plant for its metabolism. So there is a efficient utilization of water. So this type of transpiration where very trace quantity of water is lost from the plant body, and cutin layer or cuticle layer reduces or checks the water loss. So that type of transpiration, it is called cuticular type of transpiration. For example, calotropis, in this plant we observe this type of transpiration. Second type of transpiration, it is called lenticular type of transpiration. In plants like subabul or yuababul plant or many other mimosae members, you find that the bark of this plant have some cracks and some spots, lenticular spots, that is lens shaped or eye shaped spots on their bark. And these are what we call the lenticels. So these lenticels, it's simply cracking of the epidermal tissue, and inside there is a loosely arranged parenchyma cells which are having the large number of intercellular spaces. So loss of water through these intercellular spaces, which these cells reduces the water vapors directly going out to the atmosphere. So that water vapors which are coming in that intercellular spaces get condensed, get reconverted into the liquid, and it is reabsorbed by the plant. So it is very trace quantity of water is also is evaporated or lost from the plant body. So it is called as a lenticular type of transpiration. And the third type of the transpiration, it is called stomatal type of transpiration. It is very important type of transpiration. It is the major type of transpiration observed in the plants. Stomata, we know these are the small opening pores present on the upper and lower surface of the leaves. And at present, when we talk about this transpiration, 99% of transpiration, it takes place through the stomata. So stomatal transpiration, it is a very important type of transpiration, and only 1% of transpiration occurs by cuticular or lenticular type of transpiration. So these are the three important type of transpirations. Now let us know about the structure of stomata, which is very important to know the phenomena of transpiration. The stomata which are present on the upper and lower epidermal surface of the leaves, their structure is very typical. The stomata, they are kidney shaped, having two kidney shaped guard cells, and these guard cells, they are very typical. They are living cells. They are having cytoplasm, nucleus, chloroplast, etc. And these central two guard cells, these two guard cells, they are having very typical structure. Their inner wall is thick and outer wall is thin. At the time of opening of stomata, the inner wall, which is thick, it gets bended outwards, and as these two inner walls of the two guard cells get bended inward, not outward, they are get bended inwardly. So in between two guard cells, a space is produced, and what we call the opening of stomata. Then the guard cells, they are surrounded by the subsidiary cells. Subsidiary cells mean these are the epidermal cells of the leaves. So this is about the structure of stomata. So this is a structure of stomata. Now let us forward towards the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata. We studied that during the daytime stomata remain open and rate of transpiration phenomena occurs, and during the night time stomata get closed, and so the phenomena of transpiration is stopped. So this is a general uh, mechanism what we observe in plants. To explain the mechanism why the stomata during daytime they get open and why during the night time they get closed, what mechanism operates in the plants or in the leaves which is responsible for this opening and closing of stomata during day and night time. So to explain this mechanism, various plant physiologists put forth their various views or theories to explain. Out of these many theories, we are going to discuss in as per our syllabus two theories. First theory is Stewart's theory and second theory is potassium ion theory. Now, the first theory, Stewart's theory, which was put forth by plant physiologist Stewart in year 1964. This theory it is also called as starch-sugar interconversion theory. So during daytime, according to this theory, what happens? Starch plus inorganic phosphate in the presence of phosphorylase enzyme, it converts glucose 1 phosphate. So starch is converted into glucose 1 phosphate, and this glucose 1 phosphate is osmotically active, and so it leads to absorb the water from the subsidiary cells. So the guard cells leads to inwardly bending and finally leading to opening of stomata. So it causes change in osmotic concentration of the guard cells due to presence or absence of osmotically active solute in them. Glucose 1 phosphate it is an osmotically active solute. Increase in osmotic concentration of guard cells decreases the water potential. As the glucose 1 phosphate concentration in the guard cells increases, so it leads to the decrease of the water potential of the guard cells. So it causes endosmosis of water. As solute concentration or glucose 1 phosphate concentration increases, so it causes the entry of water into guard cells, which in turn causes increase in the hydrostatic or turgor pressure of the guard cells. As the turgor pressure of the guard cells increases, and we know the typical structure of the guard cell, that is inner wall thick, outer wall thin. So this inner wall bends inwardly, both inner walls of the both guard cells bends inwardly, causing central pore to open, what we call stomata open. So this is the mechanism of what Stewart hypothesis says. Then according to this same theory, during the night time or during the closing of stomata, what happens? Decrease in osmotic pressure of the guard cells, that is glucose 1 phosphate is converted again back into the starch and inorganic phosphate separate, and starch is osmotically inactive, so it causes exosmosis, that is water from the guard cells go out, and so stomata get closed, that is the bending walls come close together, so we say stomata closed. So this is the hypothesis which is given by Stewart to explain the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata in the plants. So this Stewart's theory or starch-sugar interconversion theory, it has certain objections. It has certain demerits. What are these demerits? First, in monocot cells, guard cells do not have starch. So what this theory says, starch is converted into glucose 1 phosphate and glucose 1 phosphate is osmotically active. So endosmosis takes place, so stomata open as per Stewart. But in monocot, starch guard cell does not have starch. Then this theory fails to explain how the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata takes place in the monocot plants. So this is one objection to this theory. Second objection to this Stewart theory is that stomata often remain closed at midday without any change of the starch content. It means, especially during the summer season, very hot day, during the hot afternoon time, stomata, it is observed that they are partially closed. And as per Stewart's theory, they should remain fully open during the daytime and without change in the starch concentration. Whatever the starch concentration during the night time, same starch concentration was observed during the daytime also, and even then stomata get partially closed. So how this happens, Stewart does not explain. And third objection is to this theory is that it does fails to explain effect of blue light on opening and closing of stomata. Blue light of the sun, how it affects this opening and closing, it is not explained by this theory. So this is the Stewart's theory. The second theory, potassium transport mechanism or potassium pump theory. This theory was put forth by Leavitt in 1974. Accordingly, potassium ions play important role in opening and closing of stomata. According to this Leavitt or potassium transport theory, there is an important role of potassium ions in the opening and closing of stomata. This is the flow sheet given to explain the opening and closing of stomata by Leavitt. Opening and closing of stomata, it depends upon active transport of potassium ions into guard cells and out of the guard cells. Here, the potassium ions, they are already present in the subsidiary cells. So, subsidiary cells or epidermal cells of the leaves, they act as a potassium ion storage cells for the guard cells. In the presence of light, during the daytime, when light falls on the leaves, then the potassium ions from the epidermal or subsidiary cells enters into the guard cells from the subsidiary cells. So, during the daytime, the starch which is present in the guard cells, it is converted into malic acid, and this malic acid immediately it get dissociated into malate ions and hydrogen ions. So these malate ions which are produced in the guard cells, that combines with the potassium ions and it forms potassium malate, while hydrogen ions which are formed from the malic acid, that hydrogen ions go out into the subsidiary cells or epidermal cells. So potassium malate which is produced in the guard cells, now it is transported into the vacuoles. In the guard cell, the vacuoles present. In that vacuole, potassium malate is transported, which increases the osmotic pressure of the guard cells, because potassium malate it is solute and it osmotically active, so it leads to increased osmotic pressure of the guard cell. And as the osmotic pressure of the guard cells increases, it leads to entry or endoosmosis of water into the guard cells to make the guard cells fully turgid. And when the guard cells become turgid due to endosmosis of water, and we know the typical structure of the stomatal cells, guard cells, that their inner walls are thick, outer walls are thin. So inner wall, due to their thickness, they get inwardly bended. Both the guard cells inner wall get inwardly bended, finally making the central pore, what we say the stomatal pore, to open. So stomata get open. So this is the phenomena what is given by the Leavitt to explain the mechanism of opening of stomata. And according to same theory, during the dark or during the night time, a reverse reactions takes place, leading to closing of stomata. So during the daytime, light during the light time, malic acid is produced in guard cells. Then malic acid is dissociated into potassium ions and malate ions. Efflux of hydrogen ion, that is hydrogen ions, go out into the subsidiary cells, and influx of potassium ion means potassium ions from the subsidiary cells. Influx means enters into the guard cells. So what happens due to the influx of potassium ions? Formation of potassium malate is formed, and this potassium malate get transported to the vacuoles in the guard cells. As this potassium malate, it is osmotically active, so it leads to the increase the osmotic pressure of the guard cells. So osmotic entrance of water into the guard cell take place due to potassium malate. And then in next stage, increase in turgor pressure of the guard cells due to endosmosis or entry of the water in the guard cells. Turgor pressure of the guard cells increases. Turgor pressure increase leads to inward bending of the inner walls of the guard cells, and finally it leads to the opening of the stomata during the daytime. While in the night time, according to Leavitt or potassium theory, this reverse reactions takes place from stomata open to all these things, finally going to night time, and it leads to the closing of stomata. That is malic acid, again it is produced, potassium go out back into the subsidiary cells, and in this way stomata get closed. So this is what Leavitt assumes. Yet this theory have certain objections. First objection for this theory is that the exact role of CO2 in control of stomatal movement is not explained. But this CO2 which is entering into the stomata through stomata for photosynthesis, exact role of this CO2, it is not explained by this theory. Second objection to this theory is that the stomata of upper and lower surface behave differently. On upper surface, the stomata, and on the lower surface of the leaf is now the stomata, their behavior, it is observed that they behave differently when exposed to same intensity of light or CO2 concentration. So how this opening and closing takes place, that is also not explained on how on upper surface and lower surface, though the all conditions are similar. Even then on upper surface the loss of water or transpiration rate may be different, and on the lower surface loss of water may be different. How it happens, this theory is not explaining. So these are the two major objections to this theory. The next point that we are going to study, factors affecting the rate of transpiration. Like the other physiological phenomena, rate of transpiration is also affected by various external as well as internal factors. Let us consider first external factors. First, light. Rate of transpiration is directly proportional to the light intensity. So increase in light intensity increases the rate of transpiration. So light have positive impact on the rate of transpiration. Second, humidity. Percentage of humidity in the atmosphere. If there is a high percentage of humidity in the atmosphere, then it is observed that rate of transpiration is low. That is, humidity is inversely proportional to the rate of transpiration. Third factor, temperature. Increase in temperature increases the rate of transpiration up to 30 degrees centigrade or 35 degrees centigrade. But if the temperature increases beyond 40 degrees centigrade, then it is observed that rate of transpiration actually decreases. So initially increase in temperature increases the transpiration. Later on, if the temperature goes beyond 40 or 45 degrees centigrade, the rate of transpiration decreases. That is the effect of temperature. Then fourth factor, external factor, wind or wind. Wind velocity. Mean when there is a high wind velocity or storms, then during that storm conditions or high wind velocity, it is observed that rate of transpiration in plants, it is observed to be very high. Because when there is a heavy storms or winds, then the water vapors which are coming out from the leaf surface, that water vapors, they are given to the atmospheric air, they are carried by the wind velocity fastly. So new water vapors coming from the stomatal pores fastly, so the rate of transpiration is more. So wind wind velocity is directly proportional to rate of transpiration. But beyond high wind, rate of transpiration even stops. If there is a very heavy storms, then during the heavy storm, the plant may have its mechanism to stop the rate of transpiration for a temporary period, so that the plant can survive. Otherwise, all the water available in the plant body may get lost and plant may die. So to avoid that, plant have its own mechanism to stop the rate of transpiration during the high storms. But initially, increase in wind velocity increases the rate of transpiration. Then fifth factor, atmospheric pressure. Increase in atmospheric pressure decreases the rate of transpiration. Means at a low altitude, rate of transpiration where atmospheric pressure is low. Uh, so atmospheric pressure increases, rate of transpiration decreases. As atmospheric pressure decreases, for example, at high altitudes, the rate of transpiration is high. So for example, in Leh Ladakh area, due to high altitude, atmospheric pressure is low. So there is a very huge loss of water, and so this Leh Ladakh area at present it is there is no vegetation, no plants because of this factor, atmospheric pressure. Then fifth factor, availability of soil water. This is very important factor because the entire phenomena of transpiration, it depends upon the availability of water, because it is the loss of water. So if the water is not available in the soil, automatically the plant will not transpire. If there is a plenty of water available in the soil, plant will absorb more water, automatically there will be the more loss of water. So available soil water, it is directly proportional to the rate of transpiration. So these are the factors which are external factors which affects the phenomena of transpiration. Now the internal factors. First internal factor, stomatal frequency, that is number of stomata on the leaf surface. When there are large number of stomata on leaf surface, then what will be the rate of transpiration? It will be more, because as the number of stomata increases, automatically the loss of water will increase. So stomatal frequency is directly proportional to rate of transpiration. Then second internal factor, leaf area. Leaf area means the size of the leaves. If the leaf have large size, automatically rate of transpiration will be high, because as the leaf size is high, large, automatically large number of stomata will be there, and as the large number of stomata, there will be more rate of transpiration. Then third factor, internal factor, coating of cutin or wax. If the leaves are covered with the cutin or any other type of chemical, then what will happen about for the transpiration? The rate of transpiration will be reduced, it will be checked, because the cutin act as a barrier. The cutin layer do not allow water vapors directly go to the atmosphere. It condenses that water vapors and get back converted into the liquid, and that liquid water is again absorbed by plant. So cutin layer, if any plant have the cutin layer, then there is a rate of transpiration will be less or low, because this phenomena or the presence of cutin, what we observe mostly in the xerophytic plant. So in xerophytic plants there is a problem of water scarcity. So to avoid the water loss, this plant develop cutin on their surface, leaf surface. So there are loss of water in the desert plants, it is less. And then internal factor affecting the rate of transpiration, that is root shoot ratio. The rate, that is root and shoot, number of roots, number of shoot, or number of leaves. Automatically we know, as more leaves, more roots, they will absorb more water, more leaves, there will be more transpiration. So rate of transpiration increases with the increasing root shoot ratio. So this is about the various factors which affect the rate of transpiration.